This is our audience. I'll let you get it set up. Good. Have you ever played a sport, had a sibling or friend or child that played a sport, or just watched sports? If so, then you've probably seen a sports-related injury. Injuries can vary with different body parts, muscles, ligaments, bones. But the most common injuries right now are head injuries. And the most common head injury is a concussion. Concussions are mostly sustained in contact sports, which include football, soccer, wrestling, sports like that. And concussions are not always caught. They can be overlooked, whether it be a doctor's fault or just the athlete or child not wanting to admit that something's wrong. But there are a few things that you can notice when someone has a concussion. The speech is so that you can notice the signs and symptoms and better help yourself know whether or not to take your child, player, or patient to a doctor for further consulting and medical treatment. The most common head injury is a concussion, and concussions are graded on a 1, 2, 3 scale, or moderate, mild, severe. Mild, moderate, severe. Concussions are not always caught as mild, moderate, severe at first. They can go from mild to moderate, can get worse, or they can get better. Concussions are graded by signs and symptoms, and there are a few signs and symptoms that you can notice by just looking. Signs are things that you notice by just looking at an athlete. The athlete doesn't have to tell you about a sign. A sign could be like bleeding or a bruise, and in concussions it can be slurred speech, or they can just be looking off into the distance and not really hearing you. These are serious signs, and they should be seen by a doctor immediately. Some symptoms are things that the patient has to tell you or the athlete has to tell you. You can't see a symptom. A symptom is like dizziness or nausea, or it can be loss of short-term memory or loss of motor function. Short-term memory loss can be broken down into a couple different things as well. We call one retrograde amnesia and one antegrade amnesia. Retrograde amnesia is loss of memory before the injury occurred. So they won't remember what they had for breakfast or lunch, or they won't remember what the score of the game was or what play they were doing before they got hit. Antegrade amnesia is they won't remember what happened after they got hit. They may not remember you picking them up off the field and taking them to the sideline. Or you can give them 4 different things to remember and then ask them 5 minutes later and they may not remember them. That's called a 4-object recall test. And either way, both amnesias are serious, but one is not more serious than the other. Headache is another symptom, and it's a serious one even though people overlook it a lot. A headache that lasts more than 15 minutes after the injury has occurred means that they have a concussion, and it's probably more serious than mild, and they should be seen. When they have a headache, you don't want to give them Tylenol because that takes away the headache, and it means that that symptom is not a symptom anymore. You can't know how long that headache lasts. If a child has a headache, they should not go to bed. They should go see a doctor and get treated if they've sustained a head injury. Going to bed can only make it worse, and they may not wake up in the morning. Another thing that happens with concussions is called second impact syndrome, and this is when you get a second concussion before the first one is fully healed. Say you have an athlete and they were playing in a practice and they got hit and they complained of a headache, but it wasn't very bad. Well, maybe the next day you didn't let them play, and the next day was a game, and they wanted to do anything to play in that game. So they told you they were fine, they told you everything. Well, if they get hit in that game and that concussion is still there, because a concussion means the brain is swollen. If that brain is still swollen and they get hit again, if the brain swells anymore, they will die. And it does not take very long. In a problem in North Carolina, there was a 15-year-old, and this scenario happened, and he got hit in the game. They didn't think he still had the concussion. They thought he was over it and that he could play, and he died in 2.5 seconds. He died before anyone could even get to him on the field. That's why this is a very serious condition, and you should be able to figure out just from a few signs or symptoms if they should see a doctor to diagnose a concussion. That is why this speech is telling you these signs and symptoms. I want you to be able to know as a coach, a parent, or just a fan that's out at a Little League game or high school game, something like that, that these things like dizziness, nausea, a headache, just a simple headache, should not be overlooked, and that they may need to see someone else just for precautions.